Hello friends, happy Sunday and happy Mother's Day. Today we are going to be learning about a widow. And our memory verse for today is going to be Psalms 85 verse 12, and it says, "The Lord shall give that which is good." Do you guys know what a widow is? A widow is a woman who was married and her husband has died. So our story today is about a woman who was married but her husband had died. Okay, and this comes from 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 1 through 7. This is a story of a poor widow who needed God's help. She needed help because she owed a lot of money, so she had debts. The man to whom she owed the money knew she couldn't pay, but he knew another way she could pay him. He would take the widow's 2 sons as his slaves. Now you can imagine that would be scary and very upsetting for a mother, for somebody to tell them, well, it's okay, we'll just take your sons instead. And so that would be very upsetting. The widow's husband had been a man of God, but he owed money when he died. And now the widow couldn't pay the bill because it's not like it is today. Women today can go and get jobs. But back then, a woman couldn't just go get a job. If her husband died, then she didn't have a source of income. The widow went to see Elisha. She knew that if anyone could help, it would be God's prophet. The widow told Elisha, "Your servant, my husband, is dead. You know he honored the Lord. But now the man he owes money to is coming to take my 2 sons as slaves." "How can I help you?" Elisha asked. "What do you have in your house?" The woman was poor. All she owned was a little olive oil. But God could use that little bit of oil to perform a big miracle. Elisha said, "Ask your neighbors for empty jars. Do not ask for just a few, then shut the door and pour oil into all the jars." So here he's saying, I'm not telling you to just go ask your neighbor for a couple of jars. I want you to go ask for as many as you can get. So the widow trusted God. She went home and obeyed him. The widow and her sons collected all the pots that they could. When all the pots were in the house, the widow shut the door, just as Elisha had told her to do. And now no one could bother the widow and her sons as they poured the oil. They were going to have a miracle. The widow began to pour. She filled 1 jar. She filled another. She filled jar after jar. So she's taking what's probably a small jar of oil, and she's filling large pots. And remember, we talked about the natural law of things, and sometimes God doesn't follow those natural laws. Well, we know normally when you pour from something, it becomes empty, and this was not happening to that jar. She filled jar after jar, and her oil did not run out. God made the oil from her only jar fill many, many jars. Usually as you pour from a jar, it becomes empty, but that didn't happen to the widow. The oil kept pouring and pouring and pouring. All the borrowed jars became full, but the first jar never became empty, and that was a miracle. Finally, the widow said to her sons, "Bring me another jar," and her sons looked around, and there wasn't any jars left. "There aren't any more jars," one son said. God had filled all of them. The widow went to see Elisha. She told him what had happened, and he said, "Go, sell the oil and pay your debt. You can live on the rest of the money." So what I love about this story, and it's not quite finished, but what I love about this story is God didn't just give her enough. He didn't just give her enough. He actually gave her more than what she asked for. She just wanted enough to pay her debt, but he was going to give her enough to pay her debt and some extra so that she would have money to live on. And so the woman sold the oil. The oil gave her enough money to pay the man who wanted to make her sons slaves. Imagine how happy the widow was. Now her sons wouldn't be slaves. Now she had the money for food and clothes and a home to live in. God did not just meet the widow's need to pay off a debt and keep her sons from being slaves. He met all the woman's needs as she obeyed God's instructions. And God has not changed. He still meets our needs as we obey him and ask him for help. Since God meets all of our needs, I want you to be thinking about some needs that you have, and then make sure that you're praying for those needs this week, because God doesn't just always meet our needs. Lots of times, if we are being obedient, he meets our wants as well. So we're going to do some life applications. Ann's dad was laid off from work, but soon Dad found a new job with good pay. How did God meet Ann's needs? Did you say God helped give her father a new job? Adam has moved to a new town and a new school where he doesn't have friends. What need does God need to meet for Adam? Did you say that he needs new friends? Yeah, he does. Zach's mom has a job, but it doesn't pay very much. Mom has to work hard to find the best prices on food and clothes. Mom says that God helps her shop wisely. How is God meeting Zach's needs? He is meeting Zach's needs by giving Mom wisdom on what to buy, what to purchase, so that she has enough for everything. All right. Let's see if you can remember the answer to the questions from the story today. What was the widow's husband like before he died? Did you say it said he was a man of God? He was. When the widow's husband died, what problem did he leave her with? Did you say he left her with debt, meaning he had things that he hadn't paid and then she had to try to pay for them? What did the man she owed want to do because she owed him money and couldn't pay the debt? Did you say that he wanted to make her sons his slaves? Yeah. Whom did the widow ask for help? She went to see our prophet Elisha. What did the widow have in her house? She had a pot of oil in her house. And what did Elisha tell the widow to collect? Remember, he told her to collect jars, as many jars as she could find. And what did the widow do after she shut the door? She and her sons poured the oil from her jar and filled all of the other jars. What miracle did God perform with the widow's oil? Did you say that even though she had just a little, he used it to fill all of those jars and she never ran out? And what did she do with those jars of oil? Remember, Elisha told her to go sell those jars, and then she would have enough to not only meet the debt, but also to meet her other needs as well. Isn't God good? All right, friends, may all your needs be met this week.